Hello, this is Darkest Star ASMR, and this is the beginning of a series, perhaps, where I just wanna tell you a little bit about myself. It's kind of like a biography in video form, something to leave to the world when I'm gone. Not that my life has been extraordinary by any means, but maybe you will learn something, maybe you will be entertained, maybe you will just learn a little bit about me. So that's why I want to do this series. So without further ado or a rant, let us start with the beginning. I was born in 1972 in a hospital in Stockholm called the South Side Hospital. I was born in the early morning, and I was a healthy, pretty big boy when I emerged. 1972. It was actually ages ago. Sometimes at least it feels like it was ages ago. In Sweden by that time we had one channel on the television. There were still movies made in black and white. So it was a long time ago, but for me it feels like it was just yesterday. Sometimes I feel like time is like layers on an orange, and they are so close to each other that sometimes you can almost smell the other layers. My mother got me when she was pretty young. She was in her 20s, I think. And she worked at the Swedish custom services. She was also a pretty big party goer. So I grew up with my grandma and grandpa because they took care of me when she was at work. I didn't go to any daycare center, and for some reason I guess it was just easier to have me sleep there and then meet her at the weekends. But anyway, that made me think of my mom more as a friend than a mother, and I can't complain about that. My mom is still one of my best friends, and without sounding like a psycho, a best friend is his mom. No, a boy's best friend is his mother. No, of course not, but she's my friend. Still is after all these years. So me and mom lived not far from each other. We lived in the suburbs of Stockholm. I lived in a place called Blås ut, which is actually translated into blow out if you wanna translate it. But it was in the same kind of neighborhood. It was 2 train stations, subway stations apart. My mom lived in a place called Enskede. And as I said, I visited her on weekends, and yeah. My father was a guy called Richard. He was from his father was a German Nazi general or something like that, who fled Germany during World War II, at the end of World War II. My grandma, my son, was a regular Swede who fell in love with Oswald, that was my grandfather's name, and they had my father Richard. So I have German relatives, which I've never met in Germany, I guess. I didn't meet my father that much when I was a kid. He was a pretty heavy drinker, and my mom and he broke up pretty much after I was born. So I didn't have any good chance to really get to know him that well. Anyway, we lived in this suburb on a street called Skärmarbringsvägen 22 in Stockholm's suburbs. And this was during the times where you could safely walk out in the middle of the night without any chance of getting harassed or beaten down or robbed or anything like that. Actually, most of the people on our street were old blue-haired ladies with skirts and, netted pants. Like really old ladies, the kind you almost don't see anymore. And I kind of missed them. It was a peaceful time. I think that the worst problem we had in Sweden during these early years in the 70s were hippies. And as you know, hippies didn't do much of a nuisance actually. Any case, I didn't come across any violence while I grew up, which was obviously pretty nice. I was also pretty shielded while growing up. My grandma and my grandfather was my best friends. I didn't have any kids that I hanged with until I became like 5, I think. They decided that I was going to start preschool. And I remember my first day, I was a loner even then, introvert I guess. So they took me to this preschool, and there was this guy there, I don't remember his name, but he had a huge forehead. I kind of remember that I thought he looked like the monster of Frankenstein, and I didn't care for him at all. So they put me on a slide, and he was supposed to catch me. And when he was just about to catch me, I kicked him in the face, ran between his legs, and I ran home. Now our apartment was like a 1-minute walk from the preschool, so that was actually my first time in traffic without any grown-ups. But after a while I got back there a couple of days later, and I met some friends. I remember one particular guy, I think his name was Richard maybe. His father was a gynecologist, and he had learned his son a lot of inappropriate words. Sorry, I have to put out my snooze. So what did I do when I was a kid, growing up in a suburb of Sweden? I walked a lot with grandma and grandpa. We used to take long walks during the day, and we had like sandwiches and cocoa, and we went just pretty much, I don't know how long we walked. It seemed like forever when I was a kid. We had a pond. There was a pond that was like maybe half an hour's walk from our apartment, which had goldfish in it and other fishes at summer. And these were one of our favorite places to go. So we went there sunny days, and we sat in that, I don't know if it was a park or if it actually was at on a lawn of somebody's house. And both my grandparents are now deceased, sorry, so I can't ask them, but we were there pretty often. And we sat at that pond, and I made up stories of these goldfishes, and it was a happy time in my life. I had no fears. The future was far, far away. Just gotta see how long this video is. And there were no troubles. On sunny days we often went like 3 or 4 subway stations away to the old town. No, not the old town. The southern parts of Stockholm, called Söder, South, which holds some of the oldest building in Sweden, I think, or in Stockholm, I think, like old houses from the 1700s. Carl Michael Bellman's house is there, I think. I might be mistaken, and it might be in the old part of town, but I think he had some kind of house there. And it's a peaceful place. I'm going to put some tobacco in my pipe. I have this. Because I grew up in a time where smoking was not dangerous. And I still enjoy a good pipe now and then, especially when I'm reading or just trying to relax. Anyway, so I lived there until I was 6. Then my mom met this other new man. I'm going to be honest, I didn't like him from the very beginning. He was big, he was a buffoon. Rest in peace. We will come to that in later entries in this series, I guess. And we decided that Stockholm was starting to get too crowded, too noisy, too dirty. So we wanted to move out on the islands. Meja specifically, which is where my grandparents have their roots. Both my grandma and grandpa comes from out here. I think they left the island at the age of 20 and went in to search for fortune and glory and found each other. Or they found each other, I think, already on the island. But yeah, they had a house out here and a lot and things like that. And every summer and every weekend we actually went out here to Meja Island when I was very small too. And I have these small recollections of being out here, smells, memories of colors, things that doesn't exist anymore. They kind of have, to quote Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, they have kind of disappeared like raindrops in water, or like, yeah, tears in the rain. But for me they will always be a part of my subconscious, I guess. Feelings of happiness, of joy, of wonder. The house, which isn't that big, seemed like a castle to me when I was a kid. Anyway, so they decided that we should move out to the island. But I think that's a story for another video. I just want to tell you a little bit about how Sweden was when I grew up. It was a calm place, at least for me. There were still old men with square glasses, hats, grey, fedora hats and costumes, walking with ties. It was a different time. A time that I miss every day. Now things are just hectic. There's violence everywhere. Death, war. Yeah, I'm an old geezer. I always return in my mind to these days long ago. Happier times. I hope you found this video relaxing and entertaining, and you maybe learned a little bit about Sweden in the 70s. We only had one channel. There were a lot of old geezers walking around. The only threat I remember from when I was a kid was across the street. There lived a family named Krantz, who my grandmother was deadly afraid of, because they were junkies. And there were some cops there now and then. There were no real fighting or anything. It was just cops, I guess. They did busts and stuff like that. And nowadays I know hippies aren't dangerous, but my grandmother was really scared of them because they had long hair and weird clothes and stuff like that. So she often warned me about them. Watch out for them Krantz, they are dangerous. Druggies. And one time, me and Grandma went to a park pretty late at evening, and we were followed by this strange, weird guy who was whistling all the time, and he just get closer and closer until my grandfather came from work. He was going to meet us in the park. Then this strange guy just disappeared. But that, I think, was one of the few times when I was a kid that was kind of maybe not dangerous, but was unsettling. And I remember another time, there was this lot of small cabins. I think that place is a suburb nowadays, but I don't know. And my grandfather and grandma, we went there on a picnic because it was big meadows and stuff like that. And there was this awful smell. I can almost feel it right now. And my grandfather watched into one of the windows, and I was not allowed to watch in that window. And the smell was unbearable. I think that someone had died and been in that cabin for a while. That's where the smell came from. So that's also kind of like a weird thing from when I was a kid. And I know that's the case because they told me later in life. And I almost smelled the same smell when I was older, and a couple of sheep had died in a small cabin, and it was summer. And I helped the farmer carry those sheep out of the house, and they were filled with flies, and not a nice situation by any means. Anyway, that's the first video in this maybe series. I have so many maybe series going. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember, there can't be any light without darkness. And I survived for 48 years. You will too. Love you guys. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.